Your monthly subscription box from postflybox.com includes all the materials needed to tie a dozen flies, along with some extra goodies. The Holo Z Midge is a rather bright little fly designed to grab a trout's attention from a ways off. Once the fly gets closer, the short emergent wing helps to suggest it's one of the numerous aquatic insects trout like to eat. Flies like this are often referred to as attractor patterns. Begin by picking up one of the size 12 hooks and feeding its point into the small hole on one of the beads and working the bead up to behind the hook eye. Then get the whole assembly firmly secured in the jaws of your tying vise. Pick up the coil of duller colored solder wire and while holding the bitter end in the fingertips of your left hand, start taking touching wraps around the hook shank with your right. After 7 or 8 turns, helicopter the wire to break it off close. Open some space between the back edge of the bead and the wire wraps. Pick up a small amount of super glue, here Fly Tire Z-Ment, and apply a light skim to the bare hook shank behind the bead. Quickly push the wire wraps forward into the back of the bead. Hold the wraps there for a few seconds so the adhesive sets. You can then tuck the tail end of the wire in and around the hook shank without all the wraps spinning. Load a bobbin with the spool of black unithread. Get the thread started on the hook shank behind the wire, and after taking a few rearward wraps, snip the excess tag off close. Continue taking thread wraps over top of the wire to the back edge of the bead and then back down to just behind the wire wraps. Now pick up the shinier, smaller diameter silver parawire and snip off an 8 to 10 inch length. This will be enough to make numerous flies. Lay one end of the wire against the near side of the hook so it abuts the wire wraps, and start taking thread wraps to secure it. Continue binding the wire to the near side of the hook well down into the bend. Then return your tying thread back up to the end of the wire wraps. For the body of the fly, snip 2 or 3 strands of the hollow silvery flashabou free from the hank. Bind the ends to the hook shank with wraps of tying thread. Here too, go well into the bend, but this time advance your thread forward all the way up to the back edge of the bead. Begin taking touching to slightly overlapping wraps with the flashabou, doing your best to cover up the black thread wraps below. When you reach your tying thread, use it to anchor the flashabou and snip the excess off close. Get hold of the silver wire and start making open spiral wraps with it up the hook shank. 7 or 8 turns usually looks pretty good. At the back edge of the bead, secure the wire with tight wraps of tying thread, then brace the hook with the nozzle of your bobbin and helicopter the wire to break it off close. Snip an inch-long segment of the white Z-line free from the hank, then separate it in half lengthwise. Set one half aside for later use, then use your tying scissors to snip one end of the remaining half off square. Place this end on top of the hook shank above your tying thread and begin taking wraps to secure it. Try to get the butt ends of the Z-line completely covered with thread wraps. You can then pull the Z-line back and snip it off even with the back end of the hook bend to form an emergent wing. The fly should now look something like this. Reach for your whip finish tool and use it to do a 5 or 6 turn back to front whip finish, seat the knot well, and snip your tying thread free. A drop of head cement, or here Sally Hansen hard as nails, applied to the thread wraps behind the bead will ensure they don't come unraveled and that the Z-line won't pull free. And that's the Holo Z Midge. Sometimes it's just what's needed to attract the attention of less than energetic trout.